everyone. Welcome to the session. At the end of the session, you will able to know about YARN. So YARN stands for Yet Another Resource Negotiator. So what is the use of Yet Another Resource Negotiator? So mainly dealing for resource allocations. So in this Hadoop version 1, so it's also referred to as MapReduce version 1. So that time, MapReduce handle both the batch processing and resource management functions. So it consists of, as I discussed, job tracker was the single master, and job tracker allocate the resource. So look the diagram. So job tracker allocate the resources. So perform the scheduling and monitor the processing jobs. It is assigned map and reduce task on number of subordinate process called task tracker. The task tracker periodically report the progress to the job tracker. So this is the version of 1. But again, so a lot of the things, it's difficult to manage the things. So in the latest version, that is Adobe version 2.0, so they introduced YARN. So HDFS for storage and MapReduce for processing and YARN to handle the resource management process. Apart from the resource management process, YARN also performs job schedulings. So YARN performs all your processing activity by allocating the resources and scheduling tasks. So generally in our operating systems, how it's managing the resource and allocating the task. The similarly in this big data, that is doing by the YARN. Apache Hadoop architecture, so mainly the components like resource manager, node manager, application masters, and containers. So the resource managers to handle the resource allocations in the clusters unit, and node managers, so run on these slave daemons, are responsible for extraction the task on every single node. So it will maybe look out, so how that each every data node, so how the execution is take over the things. Then application masters manage the job life cycles and resource needs of individual applications. So it's along with the node manager and monitor the execution of task. So the last most thing is containers. So it's including RAM, CPU, network, then hard disk drives, etc. on a single node. So hope you are understand that what is the YARN work. The first component of YARN architecture is, as I said, for the main the component. The first component I'm discussing is resource managers. So look this diagram. So this is the clients whenever they are giving the request, how the resource manager is performing. Then how it will go to node manager and other the slave nodes. So mainly for the resource manager for resource allocations. So once the request getting from that request, so it's corresponding to the node manager accordingly, what is the processing it will take place. So it is the arbiter of the cluster resources and decide the allocations available of resource for competing applications. So as well as optimize the cluster utilization, like keeping all the resources in use all the time against various constraints such as capacity, guarantees, fairness, and SLA. So again, two major components, that is the scheduler and application manager. So resource manager, again, two part, that scheduler and application managers. So what is the application manager for accepting the job submissions? And whenever the negotiate the first container from the resource manager for executing the applications. So mainly managing the whatever the applications in the masters clusters and provide the service for restarting the applications masters containers whenever it's getting failures. So what is the scheduler nodes for maybe allocating maybe resource to various applications as per the whatever the constraints of the capacities and the waiting in the queues. So it's called a pure scheduler in the resource manager. It's monitoring and tracking the status of the applications. So any hardware failures or applications failures are happen. So the scheduler does not guarantee to restart the failed tasks. It's scheduling based upon how the resource of requirements of the applications. It's a pluggable policy like plugin. So mainly for responsible for partitioning of the clusters resource among the various applications. So what are the main such plugins like capacity scheduler and fair schedules? So it's using as per that it is allocating the resources. So what is the second component? That is the node managers. So we talk about how the request coming from the, so how the resource manager getting the request from the client. The next step, how to manage with the node managers. So I take care of individual nodes in a Hadoop clusters and manage the user jobs and workflow on the given node. So once the request come, it's registered with the resource manager and send the status, that's we can say heartbeat, that status of the node. So the primary goal is mainly manage the applications, whatever the assigned by the resource manager, and mainly keep up to date information with the resource manager. So it's having sending that is a container large context. So it includes every application need order to run. So node manager create the request container process and start it. So once start the work, it's monitoring the resource usage like the memory CPU of the individual containers, and mainly perform the log management activities. It also kills the container directed by the resource manager. So what is the third component is application manager? So it's mainly, so whenever the single job submitted, so it's that is checking the unique application master associated with how the framework specify entity. So the process coordinate the application execution and clusters also and manage the pods. It tasks to negotiate the resource from the resource manager and work with node manager to execute monitor the component task. So not only that, it's responsible for negotiating the appropriate resource containers from the resource management and tracking the status and monitoring the progress. So once started, it periodically sends the heartbeats to the resource manager to affirm its health and update the record of its records demands. So final component is container. So it's having the collection of physical resources such as RAM, CPU cores, and disk on a single node. So it's managing, that is the, I said already, that is the CLC, context life cycles. So it's containing all the map environment variables, dependent stored in the remotely accessible storage, security tokens, payload of node manager services, and the command necessary for the create process. So it's giving the rights to grant rights to the application to use specific amount of resources like memory, CPU, or specific request. So in this session, we have learned about how the Yarn is managing the resource as well as scheduling process. So now quiz time. What is the purpose of Yarn in Hadoop? Manage the resource, or store and manage a large amount of unstructured data, provide the real-time access to large data sets, or to process and analyze the large data sets. So I said, so Yarn for mainly manage the resource and scheduling the jobs. Thank you.